Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. So, as I'm recording this episode, it's actually the last day of 2024. And I thought to start today, I actually want to talk about goals and how to go into this new year, whether you're listening to this at the start of 2025 or perhaps mid-year or even a couple years down the road. The premise is still the same, that when we have an opportunity to start new and start fresh, it's up to us to make a decision about what we want to do about that. So that's exactly what I want to talk about in this episode, because I know that when we are raising kids, we're in the thick of it, we often get stuck in the perpetual cycle, the perpetual, it feels like sometimes a hamster wheel of waking up in the morning, getting the kids ready for school or daycare or whatever that might be like, rushing off to work or whatever's on your to-do list, getting the kids home, dinner, bed, and then you're back at it again. And it seems like when you look around that there just really aren't opportunities for growth or change. And I know especially when we're dealing with really challenging behaviors, it can often feel like this is our only option. Our only option is to survive through the day. I know that because I've been there. If you had asked me 5 or 6 years ago what my goals were, they were only to survive the day. They were in hopes of not getting a call from school or the police or another parent that something bad had happened. I didn't see that by taking a really key step of creating goals, that I actually had the power to change what was happening in my life every day. I could only see that what was in front of me, what I thought was my inevitable day, I could only see that as the possibility. I felt like goals were for people who didn't have kids, who certainly weren't dealing with challenging attachment and trauma related behaviors. I felt like goals were for those people, not me. But here's what I know, what I've learned, what I've experienced, what I have seen parent after parent go through, is that when we can take a step back, when we find a bit of peace in our day, when we can take a step back from what we see right in front of us, when we take a step back from looking so closely, that expression of it's hard to see the forest from the trees. That is 100% the truth when it comes to what's happening in our life. We often end up on this autopilot where we are literally or figuratively, swinging away the behaviors that are in front of us, the challenges, sometimes the extracurriculars or whatever that might be, the caseworkers, the therapists, all of the things that end up as part of our daily routine. oftentimes that's all that we can see as an option as to where to go with life. But today, as I'm wrapping up 2024 and looking back on the just wild things that have happened in my life, because I did exactly what I'm going to instruct you to do or encourage you to do. When I look back, even just on the past year, in the wild changes that have happened in every area of my life, my relationships, my career, my finances, and reaching my goals, I I know wholeheartedly, and there's so much research to show that this is how we make change. We have to first decide that we're ready. We have to decide that what's happening today isn't enough for us. It isn't right for us. It isn't aligned with who we are. And as humans, we're either growing and evolving or we're dying, quite frankly. And, of course, we're all at some point, our end will come. But what I mean by that is we're never actually just stagnant. We're never just status quo. We are either growing and evolving and changing, or we're disintegrating. Our mind stops, um, it loses its creativity. Our body starts to deteriorate when we're not doing things that are aligned with who we are and what our purpose on this planet is, quite frankly. So, my first question for you is, what do you want in your life? If you look around at your most important relationships, perhaps with your significant other or with your kids, maybe your own parents, if you look at your relationships that you have with friends or maybe lack thereof, next look at what's happening with your finances. Look at how you make money, but how much money you're making also. The action that you take every day that puts money into your bank account or doesn't. I also want you to look at your purpose. Really reflect on what you see as your current purpose on this planet. And I know most of my listeners are parents. That's who I attract, right? This is a parenting podcast. And I really want to encourage you, unless you have a plan to be a lifelong parent in some other capacity, a foster parent or um, uh, uh, perhaps a secondary parent as a grandparent, which we don't really get much control over that, right? But if you answer that question by stating that your purpose is being a parent, well, that will significantly change when your child becomes an adult. Your role changes. And of course, you're still their parent. But if today the purpose that you see in yourself is parenting your children, well, it's going to change. And so being able to see what your bigger purpose is beyond being a parent, which is extremely important, but what else? I also encourage you to look at your body, your health, your diet, your how you feel every day. And I would add into that your mental health. There are several other areas of life, things that we can think about as far as like where you live. For some people, it's things that you have, places you travel. When you take all of these things into account and you look at what your current situation is, don't beat yourself up for what you don't have, because today is a new day, and today is a day to decide or not that you're ready for something different, something expanded, something bigger than what you're currently reaching for. Because the truth is that accessing whatever it is that you really seek, you already have that power in you. And I know That probably sounds crazy to you. I know when I first started working with my mindset coach, I, like most others, had the thought process of, well, yeah, but I can't be a doctor, or I can't be the queen of, I don't know, some random country. So, of course, there are some things that are unreachable, but that list is way smaller than you realize. Because when we take a look back over history, for example, everything, not even thinking about history, just open your eyes if they're not already open and take a look around you. I'm sitting at my desk in my office and I see all kinds of things around me. I see my laptop, also my desktop computer. I see a coffee mug with some tea in it. I see a cute little gift bag. I see some pens, right? Several things around me that every single one of those things around me started with somebody, a somebody like you or me or somebody in your family had an idea. They had an idea to, for example, create a container that we could put our tea in or a coffee or a beverage. Somebody had an idea to create a container with a handle so that our hands didn't get too hot. And they imagined it with their imagination. Maybe they drew it out or made a mock-up of it with something, some other type of material. And then that person set out with, well, they also had to make a decision. They had to decide that they wanted that thing, that coffee mug, for example. They had to decide that they wanted it so bad that they were going to persistently take action until it came into form. It's a silly example. It's just a coffee mug. But prior to that person having that idea of a coffee mug, they didn't seem to exist. Nobody had ever seen one or used one. People were burning their hands on their cups that didn't have handles on them. Again, I know that sounds so silly and simplistic, but trust me or challenge me, right? Look around at everything around you. Everything started with an idea, a decision, and persistence. Persistence in doing whatever it takes to make that thing happen. I've seen that same thing happen with things that aren't so tangible. For example, my relationship with my son. If you had asked me 5 years ago, what will your relationship with your son be like at the end of 2024? I honestly was telling people that I felt like I might be visiting him in jail, or worse, that he might do something so tragic that would take him out of my life forever. All I could see were the behaviors and the interactions with the police and the counselors and the social workers, and that's all that I could see. I couldn't see that I had any possibility of creating a different relationship with him. And I couldn't see that he had the capacity to have a relationship with me or anybody else, quite frankly. And I hate that I say that. I hate that I felt that. But at the same time, it was my reality. I was so caught up in behaviors and trying so desperately to fix them, to end his suffering and my own, that I couldn't see, I couldn't take a step back from the tree of my son and see the forest. I couldn't see that there were other possibilities for his future. I couldn't see that there were other possibilities for our future. And now, as I record this podcast, we're building a beautiful relationship. But it didn't just happen by accident. I made a decision several years ago. He didn't know this. He was doing his thing and working through whatever he was working through without me. But I had to make a decision. I had to decide that I was going to persistently imagine having a good relationship with him. I made a decision a couple of years ago to start journaling every day in a creative, imaginative kind of way that I wanted to have a relationship with him where I was listening to him and attentive to him and just responding to him, not reacting to his behaviors, if there were any, not putting my own um, expectations on him, just responding to him. I made a decision that I wanted a different relationship with him. I could have made a different decision. I could have decided that, you know what, he's never going to change and I don't want a relationship. I could have decided that, but I didn't. So I took persistent action for a couple of years, and our relationship shows as a result of me having a vision, creating a goal, and taking persistent action. And of course, it, might have bumps down the road, but I'm okay with that because I now know I have proof. I have solid evidence every day in front of me that because I picked a goal and took action on it, I have evidence that I can create my reality. I've had the same impact on other things in my life too. I decided around the same time that I decided about the relationship with my son, I decided that I wanted to, that being at the beach, having a vacation home is extremely important to me. Actually, this goal has been going on for about 3 years. I made a goal that I was going to have a house at the beach. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I was certainly in no place to be buying a beach house or anything like that. But I created a goal and have been and visualized it and have been taking consistent action towards that goal. So that first step, if you are ready and willing to create change in your life, if you look around and you're unhappy with your circumstances, or even if you're not unhappy, if you're just not fully satisfied, if you have this pull inside of you that is telling you things could be better, I know that even if you think your life is fine, okay, good enough, I know that so much could be so much better in your life. I know that because aside from my relationship with my son, I thought my life was pretty good too. But the drastic changes that have happened in my life, in addition to I shared about my relationship with my son, I shared about, well, I didn't even share, but huge progress towards that beach house. We now own a vacation home that we built from the ground up, and it has been bringing in profits, and we've been having a huge impact on other families having a place to have a peaceful vacation, which is so important to me. In addition to those kind of tangible things, I also have been taking steps towards helping parents just like you. And my sense of purpose and fulfillment is tenfold compared to what it was even a year ago. And if you had asked me a year ago, I love the work I do. I love my job. I love helping. But the way that I'm impacting parents today is tenfold compared to what it was even a year ago because I have a goal and a vision for myself, for my future, and for the way that I want to impact others. So for you, in making that decision that you want something different, I'm going to share a couple of practical things that you can do to start moving in that direction. So the first step is really asking yourself, what do I want? Right? I gave you the task when we first started chatting here today about looking around and seeing what your current situation is, and don't beat yourself up. If you haven't been really honestly going through the process of creating a vision, creating a goal, and taking action every single day, Not just sometimes, not just when you feel like it, not just once or twice a year, but every single day. When you are ready to start taking action every day towards what you really want to happen in life, that's when you'll start seeing change. But first, you have to decide what you want. Look at that list of what you currently feel like is missing in your life and flip it around. If you currently feel like your relationship with your significant other is kind of at a standstill, maybe there's no romance in your relationship, or you feel like you have a relationship where it's more transactional, who's picking up the kids today? Did you take care of the dishes? Things like that. But you really want to have intimacy and connection and somebody to talk to and share with. Write it down. Write down what you really want. And I implore you to not look over at that person that you have this relationship with and say, well, he's not capable of that. Because I'm not asking you to change them. I'm asking you to write down what you want, and we'll talk about in a few minutes what that means for you. All right. So write down what you want. If you don't have a relationship right now, if you are a single parent or just on your own and you want a relationship, but you feel like you've tried and tried and tried and nothing's working, you've been trying dating and it's exhausting, or you're too afraid to date, or whatever it might be. If you want somebody in your life, write it down. After you have your list, or maybe write out a map of what you want, a list, a map, a vision, whatever you want to call it. After you have written it down, I want you to visualize it. I want you to, when you're done listening to this episode, I want you to close your eyes and feel these things in your life. I want you to smell, taste, touch, hear the sounds, the smells, the sights. I want you to experience in your mind what life could be like. I want you to fully immerse your senses, because that is actually a huge key element to taking action. Is our brain is an interesting phenomenon. Our brain only knows the information that we give to it. And our brain, actually, our memory doesn't really handle time very well. And so the purpose of this visualizing and pulling in our senses is actually to convince our brain that we already have these things. Because much like maybe you've heard of this before, but the idea of, if you decide that you're getting a new car and you decide that you want a red convertible, for example, you decide, you know what? I'm ready for a new car. I've always wanted a convertible. Red is my favorite color. I want a red convertible. Well, two things happen. One, you start seeing red convertibles all the time. Once you make that decision, you start seeing them more and more and more. Or maybe prior to making that decision, you'd see them occasionally. It seems like they start crawling out of the woodwork because your brain is now seeking it. Our brain is actually wired to do that from way back when humans began. Our brains are wired to seek what it is that we're looking for. A little tip, the same is true when we're thinking about our kids' behaviors. If we're telling our brain that that we're going to get a call from school, or that the police are going to call, or that our child is going to steal something again, we're looking for evidence too. Our brain is looking for evidence for that. But I digress. Back to what we were talking about, but two things happen. One is that we start seeing that thing all the time, the thing that we're seeking. Our brain starts noticing it more and more. They were always there. Nothing changed in our reality other than we started noticing. And the other thing that starts happening is we also start noticing opportunities or ways to make it happen. So, say, for example, that you decide you want a red convertible, but you don't know how you're going to afford one. You're not really in the place to buy a new car, but you know you want it and you've made this decision. One way or another, you're going to figure out how to get that red convertible. Well, in addition to starting to see them all over the place, you also start noticing opportunities that might make that happen. You might, maybe you always throw away the junk mail, but for some reason today, you decide to sift through it and you notice a letter from an old cousin who their spouse passed away and they have a red convertible that they need to get rid of and wondering if anybody in the family, has a couple $1,000s that they would be willing to trade for it. Or maybe same with the junk mail, maybe you always throw away the flyers and you notice that a local car dealership has this amazing sale that you just can't pass up. Right? You start noticing things that you wouldn't have noticed before. Things that were already there all along, but you weren't noticing them because you weren't looking for them. So by visualizing but pulling in your senses, you help provide additional information to your brain so that it's more in tune with what it's looking for. So the next step is then to ask yourself, what's getting in your way? I can say that most often, and certainly for myself, if you had asked me a few years ago, what was getting in the way of me having a strong connected relationship with my son, I would have said his behaviors. I never would have considered that it was who I was being when I was with him. I never would have considered that it was because I wasn't creating a goal to have a better relationship. I didn't even see that having a better relationship with it was a possibility. I put the blame on my son. I didn't know that I was doing that, but I said, we can't possibly have a good relationship because of his behaviors. I believed it wholeheartedly that it was his behaviors that were getting in the way. The same is true for all of us, right? Why aren't you buying that new car? Well, because I don't have enough money in my bank account. Well, why don't you have enough money? Well, because my job doesn't pay me enough. Okay, but are there other jobs, or have you asked your boss for a raise, or are there side things that you could do to make that extra money so that you could get the things that you want? Or perhaps there are other opportunities that you're just not even seeing right now because you're too close to the trees. So I want you to be brutally honest with yourself, but also compassionate, right? As you as you've created your vision of what you want and you're working on visualizing it, pulling in all of your senses, really take that time for you to reflect on what you really want. I then want you to be brutally but compassionately, I know that's ironic, right? But I want you to be honest with yourself. And if the words that are coming out of your mouth or that you're writing down on paper about what's getting in your way is somehow putting the blame on someone else or on circumstances, that's fine. Go ahead and write that. But I really encourage you to say, but what's my part in that? What do I have the power to change or do differently or look at differently, approach differently? What can I do? Because this is your life. If you're blaming your boss for your income, what power do you have in that? Is it the only employer in your area? Is it the only way to make money? There are always other options. So after you've reflected on what's getting in your way, then I want you to ask yourself, what needs to change to reach your goal? What do you need to do differently? What decisions do you need to make? Where could you perhaps be more persistent? Really, only you know what's right for you. Only you know what you really want in life. I really encourage you as you're going through this process, two things. I really encourage you to let go of other people's ideas and opinions. As you're reflecting on what you really want in your life, take other people's ideas and opinions out of that. If you're thinking, I really want a beach house, but my family's never going to move to the beach, what will my spouse think if I want to live, someplace closer to the equator? How will my kids go to school there? How will that all work? What kind of school is there, right? Like, I really encourage you to not think about how it's going to happen and instead just have that idea. When I had shared earlier that I, several years ago now, had created this goal that I want a beach house, right? This is my goal. I want to have a house on the beach where I can relax, connect with nature, and where I can do my work in this world. So this is my goal. I started this by visualizing. I went on to realty websites, saved listings of places that I love. I could smell the ocean water. I can feel the heat on my face. I visualized it. And so this is my goal. I had no idea how that was going to happen. And I had all of these things running around in my head about how that would impact my family and what would my family think. And of course, they love the idea of, going to the beach, but living there, not so keen on that maybe, right? But over time, so I still have this goal, this vision, but it's changed because a few years ago when I first created this vision, I couldn't even see all of the possibilities because I was a little too close to the trees too. I continue to do this work and reflect on what I really want and how I want to see my life. And it's changed and adapted. And that's okay because I still have this big vision about what that's going to look like. But what I do know is it's so incredibly important to filter out other people's opinions and ideas because things will play out the way that they're supposed to, for one. And if we're pulling in other people's ideas and opinions, we don't actually know exactly what they're thinking. Our loved ones might have opinions and ideas that are based on them being too close to the trees, too. Or we might not actually know what they're thinking because we haven't asked yet. And we're basing our perspective of their opinions on things that they've said in the past, but perhaps they have new ways of thinking about these things too. I would also really implore you as you're going through this process about visualizing and creating a goal, and really figuring out what's getting in your way and what you need to change. I really, really encourage you to understand your decision-making strategy. It's a key element of your human design, and I'm more than happy to help you understand that better. But when we're following our decision-making strategy, as we are so uniquely designed to do, when we follow our strategy, we make decisions that are aligned with our unique energetic needs and with who we are. And when we follow our decision-making strategy, we make decisions that are aligned with our purpose. However, most of us, if not all of us, are taught or conditioned to use our head to make decisions, which is why I said, don't let other people's ideas or your thoughts about other people's ideas get into your head and influence the way that you make decisions. Because actually, none of us are designed to make decisions from our head. That isn't how our energy blueprint is for any of us. We all have very unique decision-making strategies. And when we really, really follow the way that we're designed to make decisions, it's wild how much our body knows about what we need and how wrong our head is sometimes. And I'm not saying we don't use our powerful thinking mind to help us evaluate and investigate and explore and understand. But when it comes to making decisions, it's not our head's job. So, a couple of next steps for you as you're thinking about where to go with all of this information. I really encourage you to visualize what you want. I also encourage you to ask yourself better questions that help you take a step back and take a broader perspective on your life, on your circumstances, on your relationships, on your purpose. If you don't know what questions to ask, reach out. I would love to help you with this. And a really important next step is to ask yourself, what action can I take? So you've created this vision. What action can I take today and tomorrow and the next day and take it persistently until I start seeing change? Because that is the key. And I'm not saying that you need to do more, but perhaps you need to do different. So I hope that you found this episode so powerful to get you a great jumpstart to the new year, or whenever you're listening to this. I hope that it helps you shift the way that you're looking at things. I'd love to hear what your goals are, and I'd love to help you with it if you're ready for that. I know that sometimes it can be hard to dream, but it's key to getting yourself out of the hamster wheel so that you can start creating the future that you want in all of the areas that matter to you most. So be well, and I can't wait to connect with you to help you with whatever's next in your life. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.